Hey everyone, it's Wahome from Wahome Gitonga Coaching. I hope you're all having a really good Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of Business Conversations, where we interview the most successful people from across various industries, from coaches to athletes to business owners to entrepreneurs, influencers, authors, and a variety of other successful people. So today I've got the pleasure of interviewing Kapil Gupta. Kapil Gupta is one of the top UK coaches when it comes to relationships, and he also is the founder of Nirvana, and he's going to be sharing with us his wisdom on how to add Kapil. He's going to be sharing with us his wisdom on how to master relationships, intimacy, and also improve ourselves in terms of being able to have more communication and intimacy. So without further ado, let me welcome Kapil. Kapil, pleasure to
Hi,
have you.
hey, Wahome.
Really pleasure to have you on. So we'll dive into the first question. So tell us about yourself. What is your background and how did you decide to get into your business?
Sorry, I will answer your question. Let me adjust my lighting a little bit. This is weird. Okay, how is this?
That's fine by me.
Okay, cool. Sorry, what was the question again?
So tell us about yourself. What is your background and how did you get into your business?
Oh, well, okay. So, my background, I would say twofold. One is I had a 15-year corporate career, and I was in a long-term relationship for 11 years. And I got to a point in 2010, my relationship broke down. And then in about like after a couple of years, I got to a point where um, I felt like I was on this corporate ladder going for success, but I wasn't really happy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I also wanted to understand more about women, sexuality, and relationship. So I went on a personal growth path for a couple of years, really deeply left my job and traveled to US, every month, did some workshops, etc. And after that, I started a personal growth company called Turn on Britain, which we closed down that company last year in 2019. And this year, we've started a new organization called Nibana.life. And I work in that with my now wife, second wife, and one of our business partners, Rachel.
So what's the idea behind this business?
So it's an interesting question. Nibbana is it's a Pali word, which means bliss. So in Buddhism, we call it nirvana, and it also has a meaning in Hinduism. And what that means is bliss. And the idea is that we, as humans, are on this planet to build a level of bliss in our system so that we can sustain it forever. So everything we do while we're on this planet is learning how to be in bliss. And there are three key areas in our lives that we need to create and learn how to be in bliss. One is our sensuality, which is anything to do with our sex, connection, intimacy. And the second area is our material world, which is our family life, our money, our profession, our purpose. And the third part is our value system, our morals. So those three areas we gotta cultivate and find bliss in a consistent manner to to live a blissful life, and that's what Nibbana stands for. So in my own journey, I think I have sort of got to a point where how do I live from a place where I'm fulfilled, following my desires, be it my purpose, be it my relationships, be it sexuality, intimacy, my friends, my coworkers. And
Mm.
once I live from that place, all of the other areas, all of the places where I live my life, I can find that fulfillment. So that is the idea behind creation of this new brand called Nibana.
Mm.
Does that answer your
Okay.
question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And so, what's been the biggest challenge you personally faced when you were starting your business, and how did you manage to overcome it?
Well, I would say the last business, I think this is my second business now. The the first one when I created, I was moving away from 15 years of corporate career.
Mm.
So one of the things that happens when you're in a job is that we become comfortable. This that paycheck, we're working hard,
Mm.
obviously. It's not that we don't work hard. And there's obviously, enjoyment in the job. But I find that I got comfortable with the paycheck coming every month. And I was becoming risk averse in some ways, like there was this feeling of fear that if I don't have this money coming in every month, then somehow I won't have food to eat, I won't have shelter over
Mm.
my head. And those were kind of like the key fears that I had when I first jumped from like a corporate career to running my own business. And part of that was to learn what that really means. Part of that was to learn finding my own value. Like
Mm.
I had a really amazing corporate career, and uh, I did MBA from a world-renowned university. I was making 100 grand a year plus. Um, and yet there was this place where I didn't find value, like inner value in myself.
Mm.
There was this fear that was driving me. So I had to like work with my mind to um, to actually be okay with that risk and to get to a point where like, oh no, if I keep doing the thing that I'm doing, ultimately I will be okay. That I will be able to, earn enough to have food, to have shelter over my head. Um, and I think those are the kind of fears that I had to sort of work through. And then another big one was when I started my first company. I was giving a challenge to raise $1 million to buy franchise license, and that was a big sort of my relationship with money, and that I was okay raising funds and making money for someone else, but can I do that for my own business? So I had to do a lot of work around my mindset to be able to have the confidence to raise that kind of money, and we did, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there about mindset, it's one of the biggest things that I find that stops a lot of business owners from creating a business, that their mindset defeats them. And that's the reason why they struggle, because especially when they face the first challenge or hurdle, they easily give up because they haven't got the right mindset in place.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I find that we only change from inspiration or desperation, and more often than not, it's from desperation. And so, in my case, my desperation was when I got into personal growth work, was that I really wanted to change my life. I got to a place where I used to sit and think about this place where, like, oh, something deep inside my soul didn't feel fulfilled. And I used to ask myself, is this all there is to life? It almost felt like I had the formula down for
Mm.
climbing the corporate ladder. It was like, yeah, I'll work hard. I'll put, more hours in the day into my work. And in a few years' time, I will sort of make more money, get to a higher position in corporate. And at the same time, I didn't really have that sense of play, sense of mystery, sense of like deep enjoyment in my life. And it literally got to a point where I couldn't live without that anymore. And when that happens, then I think as they say, that when the student's looking, teacher arrives. So when I was ready, this path opened up for me,
Mm,
and I felt so desperate that there was no other option, you know.
mm, yeah.
And yeah, it's now been what, almost 8 years now, 7, 8 years, and it's been amazing. Like every moment of my life, I live from a place of like deep enjoyment and fulfillment, and I've learned so much about sexuality, about relationships, about how to really enjoy the mystery of life, the uncertainty of life. People are usually afraid of the uncertainty, of the unknown. And my training over the last 7 years has been how to go into the unknown and enjoy it.
Mm,
And I think you've got to learn how to be okay with that to, I think to enjoy doing something for yourself. Because otherwise you're just tortured all the time. you know?
I definitely agree with that. So, what advice would you give to people who are thinking of creating a business, but they're too scared to make that first step?
Oh, wow. I would say have some coaching. Like I think what people usually do is they just jump into something and not have the network around them, the support
Mm,
network around them. So like if you are moving from if you're changing your life, it's good to have guidance from someone who's done something like that before.
mm,
Not as a way to like tell you what to do, but to guide you is like to look at your blind spots, to look at the places where you're like, um, oh, how about this? How about that? Have you thought about this? So I think uh, I would say guidance is one of the main things. Second thing is educate yourself um, with all the different ways. Like learn about one of the big things I had to learn about was accounting, finances. I had to learn about the legality of running the business. So there are all sorts of these things that you have to learn about. And I would say do something that you're passionate about, you know? So that's another big piece.
you answer that.
And the final thing I would say is to surround yourself with a community of like-minded people who are all going towards the similar sort of thing, so that that energy drives you. Because if you're doing it on your own, it's just not fun. Like for me, it's just not fun doing something on my own. I
Mm,
love the community aspect, the connection, the drive that gets created when you're, working with a bunch of people who are all doing the same thing.
like that. So, what are the most common reasons why people come to you for work, and how can you help people?
Well, there's two areas I would say. One is that my path was to move from a place where I got reasonable success in corporate career, and I wasn't finding it fulfilling.
Mm,
And I had this question of, is there more to life than just this? So I find that a lot of people who are in a similar situation, entrepreneurs, people who have been in corporate careers for a long time, and they want something more from life. So it's those kind of people. And the second piece was around my relationship. I find that a lot of people who have been in more than one relationship, who are in long-term relationship and struggling and want to get better at relating with their partners, want to get better at sexuality and intimacy. So those kind of people usually come to me because that's been my journey.
mm,
So those are the kind of people I usually end up working with.
mm. So, in a recent survey of 9,000 workers across various industries by UK Workplace, they found that 70% of women suffer from lack of confidence, while 60% of men suffer from lack of confidence. In your opinion, why do you feel that so many people, suffer from lack of confidence or low self-esteem?
I would say that we in my experience,
Mm.
we define a lot of our value based on how other people think of us.
Mm.
So one thing I realized early on in my personal growth journey was I had designed my life in such a way that when people would look at me, like my family, my friends, my social circle, when they look at me, they will say, "Oh, he's made it in life, right? He's got a great relationship, great corporate career. You know, he owns these properties. So all the tick boxes
Mm.
are there, and he's checked all these boxes, so he's made it in life. And because he's made it in life, he'll be happy." And I think a lot of the world we live in is created in such a way that we look at other people to say, "Oh, once I have ticked all these boxes, I'm going to be happy." And other people are telling me that I need to tick all these boxes so that I can be happy. And I think that's most of the people I talk to are in that place. You know, they've spent years of their time in building their life so that like once I get there, once I have this much money in my bank account, once I get to that particular job, once I have this kind of relationship, I will be happy. And they're not, because it's not based on what they truly want, and it wasn't based on how what I truly wanted. And that led to a lot of like um, issues with confidence, because
Mm.
we're trying to always please others, not necessarily knowing what we want and have the confidence in our own desires. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like that. I think it is that's a big part. I think a lot of times people are so consumed with comparing themselves to other people that they're always never. It's never enough. You know, they might feel I need a nice car. Then their friend says I've got this brand new Mercedes, and they feel I need to match that, or I need to have
Right.
their results.
Yeah. So we're always comparing, like, oh, he's got a nice house, he's got a nice car, they're going on this amazing holiday, and I
Mm.
want to be able to do that. And if I am able to do all those things, I will be happy because they
Mm.
all look very happy,
Yeah.
right? And then we also go, we have our friend circles where everyone's talking about this, like how much you can have. And once you have how much you can, all of the things that other people are talking about, there's this idea that it'll be an amazing place to be once we have all of these things. And that never happens. Like,
Mm.
I would challenge you or anyone who's listening to this interview is like, look at your life so far and really see where you compared yourself to someone and did something, and if that really made you happy. Because
Mm.
usually what happens is that you get to that point and then you're like, oh, I need to now do the next thing so that I can be happy. And then you achieve that milestone, and then it's like, oh, I need to go to the next thing before I can be happy.
Mm.
And you're like just on that hamster wheel, always trying to get somewhere to be happy.
Mm. That's very true. So for our viewers that may not understand, what is the difference between masculine and feminine?
You don't ask easy questions, do you? uh, how do I want to answer this? I think at a simplest level, the way I see masculine and feminine is the masculine is our rational mind and feminine is
Mm.
our intuition. Masculine is doing while feminine is being. Masculine is logic, feminine is feelings. So we all have masculine and feminine in us.
Mm.
And so that's where I want to start. The second thing I want to say is that usually in our culture, when we talk about masculine and feminine, what we talk about is a socio-political way of defining masculine and feminine, which is about equality, i.e., we associate masculine with gender, right? So when we're talking
Mm.
about, you know, men, women, and other genders, are we equal, sort of in terms of socio-political rights and all
Mm.
of the things that opportunities and all those kind of things. So that's where I think it gets confusing, because we start to attach masculine with men and feminine with women. And then this question comes, is like, what about other genders? What about people who are LGBTQ plus or non-binary? You know, they don't necessarily fit into the black and white way of defining men and women. So I like to, so that's one classification. And then I think the next classification is in the arena of relationship and sexuality. Because when you go in that dimension, masculine and feminine is about differences. So in a socio-political environment where it's about equality in relating and sexuality, and in an energetic sense, it's about traits, masculine traits and feminine traits that we all have. And some people have more of a feminine essence, and some people have more of a feminine essence. And there isn't a question of gender there. It's not about necessarily about gender, but it's more about what kind of essence you have. And I think part of what I believe in and I teach, and my experience has been that ultimately I want to be a master at both the masculine and feminine energy, so that I have choice, that if I'm connecting with someone, I can have empathy, I can bring out my feminine, and I can connect with someone. But if I am doing a task, then I can bring out my masculine and complete a task and be more of a doer. And then depending on what is needed, I can move on that scale of masculine and feminine, out of choice, as opposed to out of like compulsion or being out of control.
I like that answer. Very good answer. So from a young age, we all experience gender polarization. In your opinion, is there such a thing as being too feminine or too masculine?
I don't think so. I think I don't believe in uh, I don't believe in labels, to be honest. I think if you want to be a more of an essence in either side, it's totally up to you, right? It's like, but if it's coming from a choice point of view, it's like, there are times when I just want to be in my feminine, and there are times when I just want to be in my masculine, and I have more of a choice. I do think like there could be times when, like, if you are in a job which is task oriented, and you're completely in your feminine feeling and sensitivity, and not actually able to focus on the task, then I would question, is like, oh, do you actually want to be in a task oriented place? Now that is where I think these kind of questions come in, is like, is it, you are too feminine because you have to do this task, but you are in your feminine, right? That's where these kind of issues come. And if that happens, I would say, look at what you're doing, and is that out of choice? Because if you do actually want to be in a task-oriented place and you haven't developed the masculine traits, then you might want to work on that. It's as simple as that. One of the big things for me was I was very much in my masculine most of my corporate career, very disconnected from my feelings, my sensitivity, my vulnerability. So over the last 7 years, I have done a huge amount of work to cultivate that part of me, to reconnect with that part of myself, to reconnect with my body, and have a lot more understanding and consciousness of that part. And so that, like, when I am in relationship, when I am being intimate with someone, that I can have that empathy, that I can actually feel that part, and I can be connected in that kind of way. Because in connection, you do need feminine. There's no. It's like one of my teachers used to say, nobody ever had sex which was on time, with integrity, and efficient. It's like, you don't want those traits while you're having sex. You're looking for dynamic. You're looking for connection and intimacy, which are like the feminine traits.
Mm. So, with the Me Too movement currently happening in society, there's a big distrust between men and women. In your opinion, what is the work that needs to be done by both the masculine and the feminine to bring union back between the two of them?
Just love each other more, man.
Mm.
I think so. I think both men and women are angry. Like deep down, I was watching this really amazing interview with a woman, an elder from Native American tribe. Her name is Pat McCobb, and she said this beautiful thing that even though we have lived in a patriarchal society for a long time, both men and women have suffered. You know, women, or let's say, and I'm going to interchange women and feminine in here just for simplicity. But the feminine and women have suffered because they have, all the witch hunts and everything else that they've been suppressed. So feminine has been suppressed quite a lot. While men are masculine, which is one of the traits of masculine as provider or protector. During those times of patriarchal suppression, a lot of men felt that they couldn't provide or protect their families. So they have also had gone through a lot of pain. But so it's slightly different, the experience of it and how we end up in this position. So I think healing needs to happen on both sides.
Mm.
I think so. It's more compassion, like doing our own work. We all have to do our own work, and while doing our own work, having compassion for others. And I think part of it is holding each other accountable when we are sort of doing something that's not appropriate. Oh, can you hear me? I think
I think, yeah, I think your connection's just frozen. Are you still there? Are you still there? Yeah, back. Perfect. Okay. So we'll move on to the next question. So we often hear the terms of toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. How judgmental are these to bring in balance between the masculine and feminine?
sorry there. Can you repeat that
Oh yeah,
question?
so we often hear the terms toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. How detrimental are these to bring in balance between the masculine and the feminine?
Yeah, it's kind of become some kind of a lingo these days, right? Um, for me, I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that, well, I don't. I actually don't subscribe to the idea that masculine itself is toxic. I think a lot of the what we call toxic traits come from the place where our feminine is not integrated. So if I suppress my sensitivity, I suppress the ability to be an empath, I suppress my vulnerability, then I'm not able to connect with another human being as a human being. And it just becomes something about, there's like um, a disconnected masculine. And in the same way, I think from a feminine point of view, if the feminine is disconnected from the masculine and doesn't have the compassion for that, um, it feels like a toxic thing, but it's more of not being integrated between like the masculine and feminine traits. So the thing that when I work with a lot of men, it's about like finding this place of being not just okay, but flourish in our own feminine, like our own sensitivity. Like there's so many people I talk to, especially men, who, when I talk to them about like, you know, why is it so difficult for us to connect with each other at a feelings level, at a connection based or vulnerable place? What I hear is that men say, I don't want to burden anyone with my feelings. So we're happy to carry that burden on our own shoulder and not want to burden someone else. And the uh, second thing I hear a lot is they think that if they tell someone their vulnerability, it'll be used against them. So there's some kind of like a defensiveness and being guarded about their sensitivity. And that's where like we've been taught, like if you talk to anyone, vulnerability is a weakness. That's what we've been taught. That's what I was taught. And when I heard from people, oh, vulnerability can actually be a strength, you know, that was a huge eye opener for me. So, and now I live from this place of like being vulnerable, and I want to be vulnerable. I want to be sensitive because that's who I am. And I don't need to define my being by someone else telling me that your vulnerability is weakness. I believe in the strength of my own vulnerability and sensitivity. And when you live from that place, I think the toxicity kind of goes away. That's how I relate to it.
So, in your opinion, what does it mean to be a man in society in 2020?
uh, I would say someone who's not necessarily achieved it, but someone who's willing and open to the integration of the masculine and feminine traits. Like and it's based on choice. I think if we talk about like what is um, if I just talk about myself, one of the big things I had to learn was to show up. Like that is one of the traits that I think a lot of men are missing, just showing up in the face of intense emotions or intensity and holding space for that intensity to arise, because we haven't been trained in it. We've been trained to keep away from intense emotions or suppress intense emotions. So I find that if you want to work on that part, then one of the big traits is to be okay with your own intense emotions, your own anger, your passion, and then be able to stand and stay conscious inside of when you are in front of someone and someone is shouting at you, or someone's having like, I don't know, intense feelings about something, then you can actually stay conscious inside of it and not try and fix them, but hold space for them. And that only happens when you're able to work on your own feelings and your own vulnerability and sensitivity.
In a survey of British public, it was found that 1 in 4 British people have admitted to cheating on their partner. 20% of men and 90% of women admit to having an affair or cheating. Why do you think that so many relationships are lacking the right level of intimacy?
I don't know if that question is about intimacy, more about how we define relationships. I think there's a traditional um, way of looking at relationships, which is you get together. Whoop. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah. It's just spinning around, but I can still hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I don't know what's happening. Um, oh, yeah. Interesting that we're talking about relationships and it decides to go haywire. Um, so I think that there's a traditional relationship which is based on this idea of the other person completes me, right? And what happens is you date, you have a period of romance, which lasts about 4 to 6 months, and then and then you kind of slowly start to compromise in relationships, and it just becomes about two people trying to compromise and finding this place of like, oh, you complete me and you complete me, and people stop telling each other the truth, and more often than not that relationship kind of like stagnates and then it dies down, right? And I think there's a new paradigm of relating, which is, and quite often this is a slightly radical idea when people talk about cheating, right? My, what I call cheating is lack of communication and lack of being able to tell each other the truth. Because when two people come together, even though you may have not agreed, there is a relationship contract between two people. There's covert and overt agreements that people make. It's like, if I'm going to do this, then I expect you to act like this. And one of the uh, covert agreements is that usually, if you're in a monogamous relationship, that you're not gonna look at someone else or date someone else or have sex with someone else, right? But then when we have this place where we're not able to tell each other the truth for whatever reason, then we try and sneak our desires somewhere else. And I think that's what ultimately results in what we call cheating, because we are breaking a contract. We're breaking the contract that whether it was written or assumed, we're breaking that contract.
Mm.
And so that's, I think, why it happens. But if you create a relationship where you are not afraid to tell each other the truth, you're not afraid to say, hey, I feel attracted to someone else. And you can actually talk about it, even though it's really uncomfortable, but you can openly talk about it. And you're able to really overtly talk about the agreements you have with each other, what expectations you have with each other, and really bring it out in the open. When you live your life from that place and create relationship from that place, I think uh, there isn't this thing about, you can still break a contract, but it's a lot more open. You don't hide things as much, and it's not about compromises then. It's about like, okay, we need to change the contract somewhere. And how do we do it? Or if there's something missing, then how do we complete that part? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. There's a good answer to that. Um, so, what advice would you give to people in relationships that are struggling with intimacy and connection within their relationship? What 2 or 3 things would you advise them that can help?
Truth telling. Do this 10 minutes for 10 minutes every day. Set a timer. And for 5 minutes, one person in the relationship tells you all of the truth that they haven't told you. And that is true for them about relationship. And you're not going to say anything back. And then 5 minutes later, the other person goes the same way. And you're not supposed to sort of reply or get defensive or go back. So for 10 minutes, you're just there to listen to each other. And after that, you do not discuss that for next few hours. Just let it sit inside and percolate. And you will see that if you build that into a daily routine, then your relationship will start to shift. Because I think one of the biggest things we have currently have in our relationship is that we don't tell each other the truth. Because we think that if we tell them the truth, someone will someone will get hurt, or the other person will get hurt. So we hide the truth from other people. And if we actually build this solid foundation in the relationship, that our relationship is based on truth at all times, that will completely shift your relationship. That's the first one of the cool tricks.
I like that. Sounds like it makes it fun having to.
Easier said than done, though. It takes
I like
practice.
that.
It does take practice, because I coach people all the time. And that is the number one exercise I give people when they are in relationships. And almost always people start doing it, they see a lot of change, and then a week later, 2 weeks later, they stop doing it. And then the same issues start arising again. And I'm like, oh, are you still having this 10-minute truth telling? I was like, no. We've stopped it. I was like, why did you stop it? It's like, it's one of those things, because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to keep telling truth and keep.
Okay, you're back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get the last part, what I just said?
You said it's uncomfortable to keep telling the truth.
Yeah, like truth is really intimate. Truth is very vulnerable. And it feels like we're exposing ourselves when we are telling the truth. So that's why people find it hard to maintain it, because we can only take a little bit of intimacy in life. Even though we think we can take a lot, if you think that you can take a lot of intimacy, I will say start practicing telling 5 minutes of truth to your partner for the next month and see how long you last. That'll tell you how much intimacy you can have in your life.
So, sexuality is a very taboo topic in society. How do you feel we can go about addressing this issue so that both men and women can feel more freedom over expressing their sexuality and talking about it?
I think it is a taboo topic because sexual energy is very dynamic, in the sense that there's this quote I heard: sexual energy is the most potent energy on this planet, and it is also something we have the least amount of skills to work with. So there's like this fear that we can't stay conscious inside of the sexual field or sexual energy field. So it becomes a taboo, right? And then that combines with our insecurities of, oh, if I want something taboo, I will be I will be labeled as something. So for women, quite often, if they get into sexual power, our society goes and says, oh, label them as sluts, label them as whore, label them as all sorts of things, which is a negative term. So there's this fear. Or men display sexual hunger or any kind of taboo, straight away men are labeled as creepy or all sorts of other negative terms. So I think we are then afraid of these terms being labeled as X, Y, and Z, and also then it's a lot about how we relate to each other. Like if my partner has some kind of attraction to someone else, then what does that mean about me as a man? Am I man enough? Am I good enough? All of those fears then come in. So I think all of these things make sexuality quite a taboo, because ultimately what happens is that we then have to challenge ourselves. We have to look at, am I really man enough if my partner is attracted to someone else? How is her attraction or his attraction has anything to say about my manhood? Or if you have any abandonment fears, then, oh, as soon as someone's attracted to another person, then I go straight away into my fear of abandonment. So part of the sexuality work, I think, is um, to again, it's a mindset thing, to do the self exploration of who you are and finding your own inner strength and value and self worth. And sexuality is a great portal for that because it's enjoyable. You know, while you are torturing yourself, finding your self worth, you can have fun. You know, like you can do that by meditation as well, but meditation is fucking boring. So if you use sexuality for that kind of purpose as a portal for growth,
Mm.
there's a lot of stuff in there, and that is the reason why it becomes so taboo, because it directly rubs against our deepest fears and insecurities.
Mm. I like that. So, in Cosmopolitan magazine, they recently found the number one reason for breakdown in relationships was communication. What advice would you give to people wanting to improve their communication in a relationship?
Uh, Conflict is good. Conflict is sometimes necessary to create friction in relationships. However, when when you are inside of a conflict, I was reading somewhere one of the main reasons why people get divorced is not because of conflict, but because when they are inside of a conflict, they take things personally. So instead of fighting about a circumstance or fighting about a situation, when we have conflict, we make it about, oh, you are a bad person.
Mm.
Or, right? It's like, it's not that you did something that I didn't like, but you are a bad person for doing it. Like that's how we go into conflict when we get emotional. So when our partners get into this place of like, oh, every time there's a conflict, I see myself as a bad person, then over a period of time, that stacks up. So I would say, in terms of communication, that when things get heated, so first thing I said about truth, that is the first thing I would, what I said earlier. And the second thing is when you are communicating, communicate about the situation, the circumstance, what's happening. Don't make the person wrong. And if you are the person who is being made wrong, then look at it from a point of view that you are not a bad person, but the fight is about the circumstances or the situation that is being created. It's not about you. So I think changing communication in that way is quite important.
I like that. So, tell us one of your favorite success stories, client success stories, and why is that?
Okay, I have one of my clients in New York who um, this is slightly controversial, but he was not very good with interacting with women, and he really wanted to um, like integrate masculinity
Mm.
and feminine, and he got into a relationship uh, with a woman who wanted open relationship, and it was quite a challenging thing because as soon as he got into a relationship, everything to do with his insecurities about being a man came up, and we worked through over a period of 3 months. And I'm really proud that he like stayed into it, and we worked through all of the places where um, you know how he defined his own self-worth or his own
Mm.
value based on whether he can own that relationship or not. So like working through his insecurities, his idea of what a man should be like, and finding his own self-worth in a place where like, oh, no matter what my partner is going to do or what her desires are, I am man enough. I am good enough. That I have my own value that doesn't get affected by what my partner does. Um, so that was quite a amazing
Mm.
sort of working with this client. Yeah. And the other one I want to talk about is I have a client who last year sold a business. He spent most of his 20s on this, like making money, running a business, and he sold it for £1 million. And then he got to a place where he was completely like demotivated because he felt burnt out. And when we started talking about it, what was apparent was there was this place that he did all of this because he wanted to prove to other people his self-worth by making all of that money. And now that motivation was gone, it was all about, oh, who can I love myself and can I live my life from there, as opposed to continuously running after money to prove that he was good enough. And so, yeah, like that was another client I work with where we worked together for like 3 months together, and just purely going back to himself and his relationship with himself and how he can be kind and loving and be more in his desires so that he hey,
You
do you
essentially
have
can.
this issue often, or
No,
because
sometimes
my
Instagram's a bit weird.
yeah, my signal is pretty good here, so not sure what's happening.
Okay, so the next question is, what's one hobby or activity that you're not very good at?
Coffee art. So one of the things I did in lockdown, I love my coffee, and because all the cafes were closed, I started making a really nice latte. I started learning about making a latte, like a barista style latte, using just a French press. And for the last 3 months, I've been just improving at that. And so I think that's something that I'm not, it's become a hobby and I'm not very good at it, but I love coffee art and just having a really nice cup of coffee. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, like improving on my having a really amazing creamer and then frothing the milk so that it's like micro froth, and then creating beautiful coffee art so that it's just a smooth coffee with beautiful art. That's my current project.
So this is two questions in one. What's next for you? And then how can people reach you to work with you? And what social media platforms or are you on? What's your website information?
Okay, that was so many questions I forgot. So what's next for me? So I think the next thing for me is uh, I am there's a couple of things. One is Nibana.life, which is my new brand. And I want to bring all of the things that I've learned, both from my corporate careers, from my past relationships, and all of my personal growth work for the last 7, 8 years. And I want to bring all of that together and offer it to people. Um, and I love working with people either one on one or in groups and really go deeper into the masculine feminine dynamics, be it in within themselves or be it in relationships, be it in the area of intimacy and sexuality. Because I feel that there's at least two types of conversations happening. One is a masculine conversation, which is very logic based and language based. So when we speak, it's very masculine because it's very rational. And then there is a feminine, which is a body based, energetic conversation that's happening, which is always happening. Even if I don't speak a word, my body is always communicating. And I find that quite often, generally speaking, men are very good at the masculine, rational conversation, while women are good at both. They can speak both the masculine and the feminine. So they speak the rational, logic-based conversation, and they're also very energetic and emotional in their conversation. So part of what I work with people in how to translate that, and how for men to learn that feminine communication, how for women to be more of a master at both as well, and in relationships, how to use that as a framework to have enriched life and sex and intimacy. So that's what I am passionate about.
Okay.
And the way to reach me, I think that was the next question.
Yeah, how to reach you, what website?
So my website is Nibana.life, Nibana.life. You can email me at Kapil, Kapil, at Nibana.life, or my Instagram is Caps Gupta, or the company Instagram is The Nibana. And we have a Facebook page. If you search for Nibana.life, there's a Facebook page, and we also have Facebook groups for men, for women, and for relationships. So we run 3 different Facebook groups as well. So lots of different ways if you want to connect, or if you just want to find out, have a conversation, either DM me on my Instagram or email me, or go through the website, and there's a form there as well. Reach out in whatever way, and I'll be happy to talk.
Perfect. So I suggest everyone to reach out to Kapil, and you'll see a lot of huge results and growth. So this is the final question. So what's one final piece of advice you want to give to people who wanted to have more connection and intimacy in their lives?
Good question. I would say ask yourself this question: are you having the type of intimacy, the type of sex, the type of connection, the type of relationship that you want, that you really want? And if not, then what is the cost of not having that relationship, sex, or intimacy? And if you're happy with it, awesome, don't change anything. And if you're not happy with it, then why not? Like, what's stopping you from taking the next step? Because I feel that there's usually some kind of fear, and the fear is there because we don't fully take into account the cost of living the same life without changing it. And when I say cost, I mean spending next 5 years, 10 years in similar or worse situation. How would you feel? And everything that happens in those next 5 to 10 years is the cost of not having the life that you want right now. So think of that.
Perfect. That's really good advice, and that's something we could end on. So it's really been a pleasure interviewing you, Kapil, and we thank you for giving us your time and sharing all these key insights. And we wish you the best of luck, and we look forward to seeing the new developments that come your way. Otherwise, have a great evening, and for everyone else, there will be more business conversation interviews coming up later on this week, so look out for those. Otherwise, have a great evening, and for you, Kapil, have a great evening, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Wahome. Take care.
Thanks, Kapil. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.